This show is brought to you by Panini America, makers of the most collectible sports cards on the planet. The Luminance football card series features NIL autograph cards from players including Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, and Luther Burden. To start collecting, visit PaniniAmerica.net. I have a pack of Luminance right here, Ari. We've gotten one of the NIL cards out of these packs so far. We got a Rondé Gadsden the second. We've gotten some other really cool cards, some rookie cards. I pulled a Michael Vick autograph out of the last one we did. But let's rip this one. Let's see if we can get one of these current college players.
That sound that you're hearing right now is the greatest sound in the world, by the way. The ruffling.
We got
of
a Will Levis base card. That is a Kentucky, Penn State Will Levis. Here we go. Romeo Dobbs. Micah Parsons, speaking of Penn State. Jamar Chase, a proud LSU Tiger. All right, so we have an engaged Daniil Hunter. Is this a numbered one? No, we don't.
Look at the bottom right.
No number on this one. No, that's okay. Here. Well, we do have a numbered Drake London out of 299. Drake London, your former USC Trojan, current Atlanta Falcon. Ooh, uh-oh. Reflected materials. Now, this is cool. So it's got Deebo Samuel and Jerry Rice, and it's got swatch of a Deebo Samuel era 49ers jersey and a Jerry Rice era 49ers
cool.
jersey.
Yeah, that's a really cool card.
That is awesome. JT Sanders, our guy from Texas, in his Longhorns uniform. Jaden Daniels, perhaps the best rookie in the league this year. And, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner. And Malik Washington. So, fun pack right there.
Yeah, the patch pack, the patch card was really cool. And the best thing about it is that it just makes you want to open up the next one because, like, you're looking for the big NIL auto. So,
Maybe tomorrow.
It's like, hard for me to, like, watch you do one and then just know we have got to wait 24 hours to do it again. Like, I want to devour the entire box, which is true for a lot of things in my life. But, like, that certainly is true in cards.
Panini cards, cheesy bread, very high in your pantheon of things. But go to PaniniAmerica.net if you'd like to start collecting. It's time to start the show. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by Wendy's. Oh, yeah. Lane Kiffin. He had something to say. It was very interesting. It's actually something that we've talked about quite a bit on this show. But Ari, I find it different when a sitting SEC head coach says, it might not be the best thing to make the SEC championship game.
I mean, like, I understand there's only one argument against it, Andy, and is if you have to play an extra game, there's a higher likelihood that one of your best players gets hurt. Like, that's the only argument against it. Because, let's be honest, would you rather play 2 games against teams that you're going to be favored by 15 to 20 against, or would you rather play one game or one game against the team that you're either a dog or favored by 1? Like, it's just simple common sense to me. So he hasn't even played his clip yet, so I'm sorry for blowing it, but like, play the clip. But it's true.
Yeah, here's Lane at his press conference yesterday talking about the SEC championship game.
It's changed. The conference championship could have a big impact both ways for people. So I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that, they don't want to be in it. The risk to get a bye, the reward to get a bye versus the risk to get knocked out completely. I mean, that's a really big risk, just to get a bye. So I think it's ended up being a very unique situation of all, postseason sports, the way that system's set up there, and how you could go to that and get knocked out. And if you don't go, you're in. Questions? I'm not a big gambler, but that's the kind of one of them Vegas, like poker table thing. Like, that's all in. And you're going all in. And you're going all in the best conference in football. So you got to play somebody great too. Very different than a lot of these other conferences.
Usually when you go all in, Lane, you know you're probably going to win, just so you know. But yeah, I've been all in a few times in my life, and it's worked out sometimes, and it's worked out pretty terribly at others. But like, I understand exactly what he's saying, Andy. Like, it makes perfect sense. And if you're going to penalize the loser of the deal, then that's it. But like, the thing that I think is interesting too is that doesn't the SEC championship game also represent different things for different programs? Like, I feel like Ole Miss winning the SEC would be a really, really big deal for them. Whereas Georgia and Alabama would rather probably have the easy path too. So like, I don't want to, obviously making a run in the playoff is the only thing that matters now to the big time programs that have invested a lot of money in their roster and their program. But like, I wonder if you asked Ole Miss fans, would you rather win the SEC championship or make the playoff and get knocked out in the first round? I bet you they would take the SEC championship, right?
They would if they knew that's the option, but they want to make the playoff and win the national title.
Yeah.
Which you and I have said, we've seen it up close. Like, we saw it up close against Georgia a couple weeks ago. If they were playing this way, they can beat everybody in the playoff. It doesn't mean they will, but they can. And I think they would rather win the national title than win the SEC title. But that's not a sure thing, obviously. The SEC championship game, it's a one or the other is going to win it.
And he's only talking about getting in and out. Now, what about if you play in the SEC championship game or the Big Ten championship game and you're incentivized to lose? Because if you look at some of these projections, if you look at your bracketology, would you rather be the 1 seed or the 5 seed? That's going to be the situation.
The problem is you might not be the 5 seed. We keep assuming the loser of the championship game is the 5 seed. Ari, we did the scenario last week when we did disaster scenarios. It's entirely possible let's say Texas A&M beats Texas this week. This is why my bracketology looks the way it looks, where I don't have Texas or Texas A&M in, and I have them both as the first two out. If Texas A&M beats Texas, makes the SEC championship game, they would play Alabama probably. If they lose to Alabama, they'd have 3 losses. One of those losses would be to Notre Dame, which is going to get in over them. One of those losses would be to South Carolina, and one of those losses would be to Alabama. So I don't know that they make it in. If Indiana's 11-1 and Penn State's 11-1, like, I don't know that they would make it in that scenario.
I know, but I'm focusing on the situations where it would happen. Like if you're Oregon, for instance, and you make the Big Ten championship game as an undefeated team, if you lose in the Big Ten championship game, you're going to be the 5 seed. Like that, I think you can. But if you're Lane Kiffin, if you are Lane Kiffin right now, you don't want to make you want to beat Florida. You basically want to beat the hell out of Florida and beat the hell out of Mississippi State, because we don't know what the committee is going to say tonight, but I suspect Ole Miss will be fairly comfortably in. Like, maybe they're not hosting a game, but they're like the 9 seed. And all they'd have to do is win 2. Like, they don't want to go play in the SEC championship game and have the possibility of taking the 3rd loss. Yeah. And we also don't know how the committee is going to react to teams that are on the bubble who get to play in that game, right? Like, I think that they will penalize people for losing. And that's because that's kind of just the way it's been forever. But, I do think that at the end of the year, if there is a 10-2 team and a 10-3 team, and the loss occurs in the SEC or the Big Ten or whatever championship game you want to reference, that I still probably would take the 10-3 team. Like, if it were up to me, like, it's just, that makes the most sense to me. But,
yeah, but, and I think it depends on the team. I think Ole Miss 10-3, narrow loss to an Alabama or somebody like that in the SEC championship game, you probably feel a little better about them than, say, if it's Texas A&M and they barely beat Texas and they lose, in a bad way to Alabama. Like,
also,
a lot of
it
it will
will
also depend on how the game goes.
Playing in the SEC championship and playing in a 1-possession game against the SEC champion, I think, is evidence that you are equipped to play in close games on the next stage too. Like, part of it too, I know that the selection committee's entire job is to rank the teams in terms of how good they think everyone is. And I know that we're not rewarding losses, but like, the whole goal of the system too is to create a atmosphere and environment in the playoff where there's not as many blowouts as we found in the 4-team field. Right.
Yes.
So, like, to me, if you're going against a team that lost in one of the major championship games by a touchdown, and the other options are teams that have been blown out. I still think that loss is more impressive, even though I can't stand the quality loss thing. So
we've got one more clip from Lane Kiffin. We're going to play that in a second. We're also going to bring in our friend Ralph Russo from The Athletic, who likes to argue with us as if we are currently doing the show, usually 3 or 4 days after we've done a show. And I try to go, wait, what did I say 3 days ago? Yeah, I'm probably wrong on that, but that's okay. But before we get to Ralph and to more of Lane Kiffin, I got to tell you about Rhoback. Wearing my Rhoback Performance hoodie right now, the most comfortable thing I own, and I got about 7 of them. Well, I had about 7 of them. I have about 4 of them now because my daughter has migrated a few of them to her closet, because that's what happens when people get a chance to wear one of these Rhoback Performance hoodies. They ain't giving it back, because it is the most comfortable garment known to man. But Rhoback also makes polos, Q-zips, shorts, joggers. The new jogger material is spectacular, buttery soft. So if you want to gear up, go to Rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. Use the code Andy for 20% off your first purchase. That's Andy for 20% off your first purchase. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK. If you're going to order a performance hoodie, you may as well order 2, because somebody in the family is stealing one of them. All right, let us welcome our friend Ralph Russo from The Athletic, formerly the Associated Press, formerly the keeper of the AP poll. Ralph, I always love that you got yelled at for what happened in the AP poll, and you never actually voted in it.
Yeah, I mean, you could still yell at me for it. I mean, I did it for 20 years. So if you're looking for somebody to vent to, fine, come to me. But yes, never for a second did I ever vote in the AP poll. Now I'm at The Athletic, and I can be a little more critical of the AP poll, but I will always say I respect what that poll does and what those people do to who vote on it. So all good.
Ralph, you should write a column about how the AP poll doesn't matter for The Athletic.
I would never do that, because do you want to hear my spiel? No, I don't even want to get into the spiel. It does matter. It does matter historically, because at the end of the year, teams care who's number 19, right? Like at the final with the.
I used to get really mad at the fans of those teams that would yell at me when I was a voter. How could you rank my team number 21 and this team number 19? And I'm like, to paraphrase Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. Who cares?
Yes.
And that really made them mad. So
yeah, I realized that when I first started doing that, like 20 years ago, that role for the AP of like the people, the teams at the bottom, those fans would get even more riled up, and I'd be like, dude, like you're 24 or you're not. Like, who cares? Like at this point, you're really battling over 24, but nah, people take it seriously.
They care.
Yes, that's why the AP poll will always matter. I'm no longer an AP poll, AP employee, but I will always defend that poll.
All right, let's hear Lane, because Ralph, I know you were listening in. Yeah. We were talking about Lane's initial so he got asked a really good follow-up about the SEC championship game as well, and expounded on that point a little bit.
And just to follow up on it, do you feel like it's inadvertently maybe diluted the meaning of not just the SEC, but some of these other conference championships that weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a secret. I think it definitely has. So that just is what it is. There's a cost and benefit to everything. There's great benefits to this playoff system, and so many people being excited, and fans and programs and more games. And then there's cost too. The conference championships don't mean as much. And it's not just, do you potentially get knocked out by losing it? Do you go get more injuries? So you're going to go get more injuries, play another game to get a bye, but then the other people are having a bye while you're playing. So I think that's why, I ain't going to go on record saying it, why a lot of coaches, or some coaches I've talked to, don't want to go to it.
And I think that's the big question. And Ralph, I'll direct it to you first, because I think with the SEC and the Big Ten, but particularly the SEC this year, the push-pull is, yeah, you might get a bye, you might win an SEC championship, but if you are the team that loses that game, you are probably in worse position than your fairly similarly situated other SEC teams that made the playoff that didn't have to play in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I disagree with Lane on the idea that you might get knocked out. Now, we may see that eventually, and I might be proven wrong. But if I look at the SEC landscape in particular and the Big Ten landscape, because that's the other conference, frankly, at this point, in the ACC and the Big 12, it's winning in, and you're out probably. I mean, at this point, we're probably not talking at larges for those. But I don't see a scenario where, and again, maybe this is me being overly optimistic about what's going to happen in the SEC and the Big Ten. Certainly in the Big Ten, I think whoever gets to the Big Ten championship game is going to be in, right? Whatever Big Ten championship game participants, those two teams are going to get in. In the SEC, I understand it being a little less clear because you have all these 2-loss teams, but I think that they won't be punished for playing and losing a big game. Andy, you mentioned A&M as the one that maybe I would be most worried about. Okay, sure, maybe, but I do think that I do think that the SEC participants in the SEC championship game are going to get in. Lane is right. It's not as meaningful as it used to be. And he's right in terms of hey, it's give and take, right? We have this great new system, but that other thing isn't quite as meaningful. I'm not sold on the idea that you have to be worried about getting knocked out. I will say one also thing. I thought his way of describing it was awesome. That you're playing for a bye while everybody else has a bye. So how much of an advantage is it? Right. So that's an interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that's a really good point.
Well, the difference there is that you're playing in a game that may or may not end your season, and they're not. They're going to be playing in an extra game that could. So I think that Texas A&M is the number one focus point here too, because I think you're wrong about that, Ralph. I think if A&M is 10-2 and loses in the SEC championship game, they're not going to get in at the expense of a Tennessee or something. There's going to be a team out there that beat Alabama and Georgia that only has 2 losses. And I hope you're right. I hope that that's the way it goes. But I actually think there's a possibility, and I don't know if this is insane, but Andy, you tell me, Ralph, you tell me, that A&M beats Texas. Texas finishes 10-2 on the season. A&M goes to the SEC championship game, loses the SEC championship game, and they still take Texas over them. Isn't that within the realm of possibility, or do they not have enough quality wins?
I don't think that is, but I'll throw one at you that probably is equally infuriating for people, not for A&M fans, obviously, but Texas beats Texas A&M, loses badly in the SEC championship game, gets trapped in the who have you beaten game at 11-2 and doesn't make it. I don't think that would happen, but I do worry that might, because if you're going to put 11-2 Texas against, let's say Texas lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game, and it was a fairly big margin. Texas or Tennessee, 11-2 Texas or 10-2 Tennessee, who you taking?
Well, I think I would take Tennessee in that situation because I think adding a blowout into the
Texas
mix,
getting screwed by losing the championship game.
Well, I know, but I think that also too, being blown out in the only 2 games that you played against teams that are really, really good in terms of how we view as the elite would be a bad look. And that's the interesting curveball that you add in there. It's there's a difference between losing a close competitive game against a really good team in the SEC championship and getting your ass kicked. If you get your ass kicked, I think that changes the calculus of the brain.
Okay, 23-15, the same margin as the Georgia game.
Yeah. So I feel like there's less of a chance of this that I think
I do too, but I'm saying it's possible.
But it's definitely possible. And listen, we're all going to be sort of surprised by how this thing plays out because we've never seen it play out before. So to a certain degree, we're all just taking morsels of information and extrapolating and trying to come up with conclusions when we've never seen this happen before. What I take issue with a lot, and this is a slightly broader discussion. Let me just fan it out a little bit. Is I think we get way too bogged down on 2 or 3 games that these teams play. I really get well, they, what's their good loss and what's their bad win and what's their good win? Like the totality of a schedule, man, the totality of how you played. Like, I understand, and I'm with you. I've been texting you guys this premise. I think Texas and Texas A&M might be an elimination game. I think the loser of that game could very well be out. But I also see Texas, despite the fact that its schedule hasn't been as good, as a really good team that is like handling its business at a high level. I really try to emphasize a little bit more of like who you play, how you play, as opposed to being so
okay, Ralph.
Play.
Texas went to Arkansas and won 20-10. Ole Miss went to Arkansas 2 weeks earlier and won 63-31.
Yeah, but again,
who handled business better there?
But again, you're taking like one game against one game. Like, I mean, listen.
But we can take other games too.
But I think I'm with Ralph on this, Andy. Like, Texas has won their games pretty easily this year, like, for the most part.
Like, I listen. I know,
except for the
Vandy
game, but Vandy beat Alabama. So
I know sometimes people hate the math nerd stuff, but like, if you look at all the power, the SP plus, FEI, FPI, all those things, like, I like to look at them all. Like, Texas is like a top 5 team in pretty much all of them. And that's where, like, Ohio
but Indiana's not getting in at 11-1 if we're just going with all that. So,
well, you know what? That not necessarily, because if you look, Indiana's rankings in a lot of those places is about the same as Tennessee. Like, again, like, how they have played more than just who they have played counts for them. The fact that they have torn up everybody on their schedule is meaningful. And I say that for any team, not just Indiana. So again, my big issue with a lot of this resume argument is you end up sort of trying to boil it down to 1 or 2 games. What I'm saying, like, all these games count. How did you play in all of your games?
I think that's fair. I think that's perfectly fair. And it's interesting because that gets into the argument about Penn State and Indiana, where like, if you look at Penn State's strength of schedule, and it's not, everybody's like, oh, ESPN just cooks it with the FBI. You can look at the Sagarin, you can look at the ones that ESPN doesn't make. They're all relatively the same. Like, Penn State's strength of schedule is in the low 30s, wherever you look.
Yes.
Indiana's right now is about 100. Now, it's going to go up when they play Ohio State, but it's not going to go up into the low 30s. So you're not going to be comparing apples and apples in that scenario either. So that's the part. I think you're right about that. And I don't think people appreciate the difficulty of winning against teams that are okay to pretty good in power conferences.
Here's what I'll say, and Ari, feel free to jump in on this, because I know, because sometimes I get on you, Ari, because teams are either great or terrible, right? And I know I
not anymore.
Well, but like, I understand that often you don't mean that seriously, but often you describe them. And I think a lot of college football fans are like, there's 5 good teams and the rest of the country stinks. And
Ralph, just let me jump in just before you finish that point, though. I want to just say, I just want to clarify. I make that mistake because you're right. You do get on me if I say someone stinks when they're 10-2. That's not a fair thing to say. But when I've done that in the past, it's in the context of national championship discussion. Like, you stink in comparison to the teams that we are discussing in the national title race. Not you stink overall, which I've probably done a poor job of, but I just want to say now, you haven't really heard me say that much because it's different now, but go ahead.
And that's fair. And I'm glad you've sort of corrected your behavior. Just
working on it one step at a time, bud.
but the Indiana Penn State thing is really a great example. Like, people, well, they played the same schedule. No, they didn't. Like, there's a massive difference between like West Virginia and FIU. There's a massive difference between playing Illinois and playing, I'm going to look on your schedule here, Maryland. Like, there's and Michigan State has been like the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the Big Ten. Like, those are big differences. And I'll move it to the SEC for that matter. Like, again, like, I look at like the totality of your schedule and winning well every week and winning impressively every week. And I just think that we lose that in these discussions. We get so hyper-focused on 1 or 2 games. We totally lose that in these discussions. And yeah, and again, like I'm a math nerd. I like to look at the power ratings, and I think that those are meaningful. So when I see Indiana in the top 10, like I'm cool with Indiana being in the top 10 despite its like light schedule.
Ralph, getting back to what Lane said, and I'll bring the Big Ten into this too, because while it doesn't feel like this is going to happen in the Big Ten this year, it's entirely possible it could happen next year, or maybe some weird stuff happens in these last 2 weeks, and it does become a situation where this is possible. But if either of their losers gets knocked out, either their championship game losers gets knocked out, do you think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti push to change the system? Because, I mean, the 14-team thing got leaked before this season even started. And it seems clear to me that the whole point of you expand to 14, it is to protect the Big Ten and SEC championship games as commercial products.
Yeah.
Because there's two issues here. Either both the teams that make the game are getting in, and that makes the game boring because no one cares who wins because it's not a win in your end scenario, or it's a win in your end scenario, which is really interesting. But both of those leagues feel like we're so much better than everybody else.
Yeah.
The participants of our title game should get in. I think at this point, even the fact that we're discussing this means that Sankey and Petitti are going to push that 14-team through for 2026. Like that's going to happen because they cannot stomach the idea of this.
Yeah. So what my answer was going to be, I think it doesn't matter what happens. I think they've already seen the scenarios play out and the chatter about it and want to prevent it. It does get interesting though. If you start thinking about the conversation around 4 automatic bids for each conference, which very well could be coming to at some point when you expand it to 14, and then you give them more than one automatic place. Like, what does that mean in a world where for your conference championship game, if you already know that that your top 4 in your standings are locked in? And I've heard some interesting discussion about conference tournaments, not in the traditional sense because you can't add games, but how are you sort of like, creating different levels of meaning in these games, and maybe creating final regular season games that look a little different. So I already think you're seeing the unintended consequences of the playoff. A lot of it has been good. It's worked out really well. We have a lot of interest around the country, but I do see in these in the Big Two, all of a sudden they're realizing, wait a second, have we devalued some of our own in-season product?
Well, before we get to more discussion about something that's coming on TV Tuesday night, which is the CFP ranking reveal at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which hopefully you'll be watching with the sound down and me and Ari turned up, because we will be going live at the same time. Let's talk PrizePicks, because there's action on Tuesday night. That's right. Download PrizePicks, America's most fun daily fantasy game. Use the code Staples when you sign up. Play $5, get $50 instantly. Yes, indeed, there's action tonight. Let's talk brothers. Ben Finley, brother of former NC State quarterback Ryan Finley. He plays for Akron. They're playing Kent State. His PrizePicks number tonight, 230.5 passing yards. Do you think he'll go more or less? You pick that square, you pick another square, and away you go. You can do as few as 2. The more you pick, the higher the potential payout. Another brother of a famous quarterback who also plays quarterback, Brett Gabbert, in his 94th season at Miami of Ohio. They're playing Northern Illinois tonight. 186.5 passing yards is his number. Will it be more? Will it be less? Who knows? But if you have a strong opinion, you may want to get that square on PrizePicks. So download the app, use the code Staples, play $5 and get $50 instantly. Gentlemen, while we've got Ralph, I think it is very valuable to try to predict what we think this committee ranking will look like. Because bear in mind, and Ralph, I know you've been amused by all my awareness gap tweets whenever someone yells at me about my bracket and say, how can you put this team here? That's not how the selection process works. And I'm like, no, it does. I had somebody this morning say, Andy's an idiot. Boise State's going to be number 5 because the 5th highest ranked conference champ gets the number 5 seed, which is not true. Yeah. But the committee is not doing it with an eye toward the bracket. They are just trying to put the teams in order. Mm-hmm. So where do we think, I'll start with this one. because this is the conversation that got us going Sunday when you were listening to our Saturday night show and you were texting me and Ari. Where do we think Georgia moves? Because they knocked Georgia out after the loss to Ole Miss. They put Georgia at 12, which made them the first team out. Where do they move up to?
The precedent was set last week that they will make a big move, right? Because they moved Georgia from 3 to 12 last week after it lost to Ole Miss. So I don't see any reason why you couldn't do 12 to 6. You know, do you still leave them behind an undefeated Indiana? A side note, hey man, for all the people who are caping up for the SEC is going to be okay. Like, don't worry. The poor SEC will be okay. I've seen so many people rush to the honor of the SEC over the last week or so. Going to be fine, guys. Don't worry about the SEC. Going to be fine. I think things will happen with the rankings in Indiana in the next couple of weeks that will sort it out. Let's put it that way.
I've been dying to talk about this scenario in my head as we were talking about the conference championship games and the consequences of losing it. And I am with you 100%, Ralph. If Ohio State and Oregon play in the Big Ten championship game, even if Oregon wins, I think Ohio State would be in with a win over Penn State. But doesn't that put Penn State and Indiana in a precarious situation? Because then you're wondering whether or not, like the loser of the Big Ten championship game, depending on what the rankings look like tonight, could have a secondary impact on teams that may find themselves on the bubble at the end of the year.
Are you saying because Ohio State would have 2 losses and that
their loss would look worse? You would have to find a way. But no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done.
Okay.
And Ohio State as a 2-loss team, you'd still have to find a spot for them, right? And then all of a sudden, you might not have 4 Big Ten teams in the field at that point. Because or do you think that, like, if Ohio State and Oregon play, that they're guaranteed to have 4 teams in the field? Because, like, you have to acknowledge that Indiana is going to be in a head-to-head debate if they lose to Ohio State with somebody in the SEC. And the rankings tonight are going. You just said it's going to work out for the SEC. Well, who's it going to be at the expense of? Is what I'm trying to get to.
No, right. So when I say work out for the SEC, I mean like don't the poor SEC might not get 5 teams. Oh my God! My heart. The SEC might not get 5 teams. We should all storm the Capitol. Like honestly, like it'll be fine for the SEC. But you are right. So I think I'm agree with your overall point. I think I'm a little off on the secondary part of that. I think Indiana is in trouble if it loses this weekend. Don't lose. First of all, don't lose. Secondly, definitely don't lose by getting embarrassed. I think we are heading towards Indiana against an SEC team. Do we want 4 SEC teams or do we want 5? Excuse me. Do we want 5 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams? I think if Ohio State wins, it could be loses, this weekend. It could be in a little precarious position too. Though again, going back to sort of the power rankings and things like that, Ohio State probably, being Ohio State, gets a little benefit of the doubt too, and probably works its way in. What I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, because I think this is what you're alluding to. Ohio State being 10-2, I don't think matters to Penn State's resume or Indiana's resume. Ohio State, having lost twice to Oregon, is still a top 6 or 7 team. Like, that's still a really good team. I don't think the committee then goes, well, that loss to Ohio State is now a worse loss because Ohio State isn't as good. Like, losing twice to Oregon, I don't think dings the status of Ohio State enough for it to have like ancillary issues trickling.
I just mean from the standpoint that if Ohio State beats Oregon, then you're basically have a better case for why the Big Ten should have 4. It's not necessarily Ohio State dinging the resume directly, but in that debate between whether we should have 5 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams, if Ohio State loses again, then you have a 2-loss team that their best bullet point resume on the other 2 is losing to Ohio State closely. Like, that to me is it makes it. And also, doesn't Penn State really have to root for Indiana or Ohio State this weekend? Like, Penn State does not want Indiana to win this game.
Agreed.
Like,
I would tend to agree. It's better for I would tend to agree with that.
Penn State might be on the. So right now, Penn State, because of the benefit of their strength of schedule, has found themselves out of the crossfire of the debate. Like Indiana, as the fourth Big Ten team,
With
is
an
the one that's going to
unusually
find
bad
itself
schedule,
in the debate. If Indiana beats Ohio State, I think Penn State could be out of the playoff. Like I think it's that dire. Like Penn State, because who are you going to take, Penn State or Tennessee at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's probably a coin toss to a certain degree, and I would probably take Penn State. But again, like, so by the way, I've been trying to circle like where the hot spots are this weekend. Penn State, be careful against Minnesota. Be careful. Be very careful against Minnesota. But well, yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Like Penn State, Tennessee, like that's the argument I think we're heading towards. We're heading towards Big Ten, SEC, who gets that last spot. And whether it's Indiana, like I'm assuming Indiana, which is probably a bad assumption to ever doubt Coach Siggs. Sorry, Coach Siggs and Curtis Rock and company. Like we're assuming that Indiana, because they're a 14 or 12 or 13 point underdog, might lose. But yes, I could see a scenario where Ohio State loses this game. Indiana then gets the big jump. Ohio State's still on the fringe, but in because they've beaten Penn State, and that puts Penn State in the hot seat as far as like who gets that last spot.
If Ohio State loses to Indiana, there's no rational way that you could rank Penn State ahead of Ohio State. So like that's the problem. So even if Penn State goes out and beats on Minnesota by 30 this weekend, if Ohio State loses at home to Indiana by 1, Indiana probably jumps up to 2 behind Oregon. Yeah. Ohio State would drop somewhere to be 6 or 7. Are you going to put Penn State there at 4?
But
like it doesn't make any sense.
They don't necessarily need to be 4, but I'm also saying that if Penn State takes care of business the rest of the way, and again has beaten enough pretty good teams at 11-1, yes, I think they get into a debate with Tennessee or whoever that 5th SEC school is. But I also think that they have enough oomph in their schedule for it to be okay. So again, I think you're kind of hooked on Ohio State, Penn State, and the loser of that comparison is out. And I think that Penn State will have enough helium in their overall resume that at 11-1 it'll be okay. But not,
okay, I want both of you, Ralph and Ari. I want you to look deep into your souls. I'm not trying to prejudice you. I want an honest opinion when I ask you this. I want you to look deep into your souls, and I want you to tell me if Tennessee played Penn State, if Ole Miss played Penn State, who do you think would win?
So I'm very cool with saying I think Ole Miss would beat Penn State.
Ole Miss is easy. Yeah, Ole Miss would be.
Okay. Frankly, I think Ole Miss might win this whole thing. So that's like
okay. Tennessee.
I think Penn State and Tennessee are the same.
The same. They're the same team.
I think they're the same team. I think it's 17-16, and one makes a kick and one doesn't. And I think they're around the same team.
Tennessee and Penn State, like when you break it down, both have elite pass rushers.
Yeah.
They both have a quarterback that was a 5-star. One's
incredibly frustrating offenses. Yes.
Incredibly frustrating offense, have been efficient in beating teams that they are better than for the most part. Now, the one thing that is interesting when you put it that way is that Penn State does not have the black mark on its resume that Tennessee's does.
That's what
Tennessee has a quality win, so those two things cancel out, right? Like if you have a quality win and a bad loss, or you have no bad losses and no quality wins, aren't those the same thing?
So I would tend to think, yes, you beat Alabama, that's a great win, but losing to Arkansas is not tremendous. And
they cancel out.
Yeah, so I think it cancels out a little bit. And again, it also goes back to this idea of I want to know about how you played your entire schedule, not just 1 or 2 games on your schedule. I think that a Tennessee-Penn State comparison probably goes to Penn State. But again, I'm with you in the idea that my basic premise is SEC Big Ten. That's where the argument's going to be in a couple of weeks. That last spot is going to come down to an SEC team and a Big Ten team, I'm pretty sure. And
if it's Indiana with a 10-point loss to Ohio State, they're going to get it. They're out. Just so you know, I want everyone to know that. I think everybody.
I'm with you, Ari.
Yeah, everybody
I
thinks
agree
that
with
11-1 Indiana is 100% in. I've been telling you for a freaking month. It's not true.
It's
I'm
not.
just telling you.
Ari, you and I are totally aligned
Yeah.
on that one. And I think it would be awful, by the way.
It would be, yeah.
What you want?
This playoff expanded to get teams like Indiana in. I don't
know.
need the I don't
No, it
need
didn't.
the fifth best. I don't need the fifth best SEC team. I want Indiana.
That's what they sold
Yeah.
you, Ralph. This is not to get teams like Indiana. This is to get teams like Tennessee in. It's
No,
not for Indiana.
because Indiana's in the Big Ten. We're not talking
Okay.
about Boise's here. We're not talking about Tulane's here. We're talking about a great story in the Big Ten. Like, give me Indiana over the fifth best SEC team. Like,
The playoff expanded to get the biggest brands and the sexiest fan bases into the playoff.
But you can give me one spot for Indiana, right? You can give me one spot for
I'm
the
with you.
best story in college football.
I think Indiana's been incredible, and I actually think Indiana would be able to play a 4-quarter game with Tennessee. I think they're going to play a 4-quarter game with Ohio State. Like, this isn't a question, but I promise you, if it comes down to it at the end, and it's between an SEC team that has beaten Alabama or an Indiana team that has only lost to Ohio State and has no quality wins, they will not win that debate. We know how the committee operates. And I know that we're under the assumption that, oh, well, we've never seen them do this before, so we don't know what's going to. We've seen them do it for 10 years, and they're going to do it the same exact way. There's more teams to fill out, but it's the same thing. But don't continue with the sales pitch of we expanded the playoff for continuity so we all can sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya. We did it because we want Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and Ole Miss to have second and third chances. This is what we did it for. We didn't do it for the little guy. We did it for the big guy. And Indiana plays in a big guy conference, but we're not. This is not. Let's hold Indiana's hand and welcome into the party here. They have to win their way in. They've got to knock the fucking door down.
I'm going to laugh so hard if Indiana beats Ohio State.
No, but I'm just saying, like, Indiana has to knock the door down. No one's doing Indiana any favors. I'm telling you. You know how it's going to go.
You're just feeding Coach Siggs right now. Coach Siggs, like it.
I'm not saying anything negative about Indiana, but I'm not saying
have you seen Ghostbusters 2, Ari?
Who would see Ghostbusters?
I don't know. When I was like
I
never saw Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters 2 is awesome. Not as good as 1, but awesome. And it has this ooze. It has this ooze that lives under the sewers and feeds off the city's negative energy. And like when you play it, Jackie Wilson higher and higher, it gets happy. Like Coach Siggs is just sitting here, like he's in his office right now, and he's feeling it all come into his body. He's like, what is this? And it's all of our negative energy. All of us saying they're going to get killed by Ohio State. And he's going to unleash it on the Buckeyes on Saturday.
One, I never said they're going to get killed by Ohio State. And two, I don't think I ever said anything negative about Indiana's team.
It's not just you. It's the chat.
No, I know. Everybody. But I know that there's been a lot of assumptions that Indiana's going to lose. And honestly speaking, I was talking to a buddy of mine who does the numbers, and like the numbers look pretty good for taking Indiana. I think I wish I could change my pick from Monday. I think it's going to be a game. But the point is, they are not going to be doing, like, if there is a debate to be had, the system is not doing it a favor. That's all I'm saying. And that we came into the year thinking everybody has a chance now and everybody gets to do this. Like if Indiana goes 11-1 and does not get in, then that was all bullcrap, right? Like that's a lie. All it is to give Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and all these other teams that haven't had remarkable years another chance to get in, because they wouldn't have been good enough last year. And guess what? If this is the 4-team field, maybe Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Georgia would be out. Wouldn't that be great?
Would it? Well, I'm not going down that.
Wouldn't it? If you want to be an Indiana guy,
I'm not going down that road with it. But I will say, so essentially, Ari, you and I agree. When I say this system expanded, like that's my own. I want this. To me, the system expanded to reward these teams that have these magical seasons out of nowhere, and you're not just shipping them off to a bowl game to face another opponent, to face a more marquee opponent that's sitting out half their team, like Missouri did last year with Ohio State, and celebrate Missouri because it beat a third of Ohio State's team in a bowl game. So that's why I totally agree with you. You listen, when The Athletic hired me to replace you, Ari, I wrote a column about a month ago That said, Indiana is the most interesting team in the most interesting contender, and part of the reason why is they're not a blue blood. Are they going to suffer the, hey, like, you're Indiana, we don't trust you measurement when it comes to being compared to Tennessee or being compared to Alabama? I am totally on board with that. I just think it sucks. I agree with what you're saying, that I could see Indiana getting squeezed out. Listen, if Indiana gets rolled this weekend, I'll come off that stance. If they lose by 24, all right, you know what? It's a nice story. We probably can't squeeze them in there. But if they play competitively this weekend and get left out at 11-1 because another team's got a bigger brand and we have to get 5
I'm
SEC
with you. We agree. We're 100% on the same page.
Totally on board, but
we're
like
saying the same thing. Yeah.
My point is, like, what's the sense of going to 12 if we're gonna just jam another SEC team in? I'm cool with 4, but like the fifth best SEC team.
Don't.
Like, we really need the fifth best SEC team in
That
this
is Mike.
I really have another
expanding to 12 if we're going to add another SEC team is the reason why I hated it, Ralph.
Yeah.
It's the whole reason I wasn't on board.
All of this is the reason why I love it. As Day Day says in the chat, SEC and Big Ten bias, because that's all we're talking about here. Let us transition before we let Ralph go get to work, because I know Ralph actually has a job to do.
Day. You want to join the JD show?
Yeah, I actually do.
Yeah, we are doing the hard count after this at 11 a.m. Eastern. So if you just want to stay tuned. But all right, here's my question. So BYU lost, and they were number 6 in the committee rankings. BYU lost. How far do they fall? Where do they land relative to Colorado and Arizona State, which are the other 2 teams that could potentially make the Big 12 championship? Also, tangentially, where are those in relation to Boise State? Yeah. Because that matters a lot.
Yeah, I figured you were going to ask this. So I have a theory that Boise State is frozen. They are going to be about where they're going to be, and we're going to move teams around them. And at some point, we will have an ACC champion, and we'll have a Big 12 champion, and those teams will be ahead of Boise. That Boise will be, maybe Boise moves up a spot, maybe they move back a spot, but they're kind of frozen in that 13 to 11 area. And we might see Boise ahead of the Big 12 teams this week. I think it's possible you could see Boise ahead of the Big 12 teams this week. But if you look at Boise playing, oh gosh, who do they have on their schedule down the stretch here? I mean, they played UNLV. There's not a ton of like heavyweights in the Mountain West. It's very easy to justify, well, the winner of the BYU Arizona State game is going to jump Boise next week. So I understand a lot of people are going to see that ranking tonight, and maybe Boise's ahead and go, whoa, they're going to be a top 4 seed. But if you kind of look down the road here, there's enough oomph on those Big 12 schedules to get it worked out where Boise ends up behind the Big 12 champion in the end.
That's correct. That's what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And they're playing Wyoming and Oregon State at the end of the year. The thing that I can't wait to see is
who are both terrible. Yeah, who are both terrible.
If they play UNLV in Boise and UNLV wins that game, what we do? Because I think that UNLV is a really good football team and has the ability, if they put a good game together, to win that football game.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately, I think Colorado State might squeeze them out. Yeah. But for Colorado State plays Fresno State this weekend, I could see them dropping there. And boy, like I got to tell you something, a Tulane UNLV argument would be very interesting.
Yeah, Tulane's the one we haven't talked about enough. But Tulane could beat Army in the American Championship game. Tulane's losses are to K-State and Oklahoma.
Both competitive games too.
Right. The Oklahoma loss not looking so great now, but it would be a really interesting argument if UNLV were to beat Boise State and win the Mountain West, or Colorado State were like, that would be an interesting argument. But I think Boise State's okay as long as Army doesn't win out. Like if Army wins out, it's a different story.
Yeah, then yeah. If Army beats Notre Dame this weekend, and I will be at Yankee Stadium in an open,
but that frees up a spot.
Game. Yeah,
you're going.
That could. I'm sorry.
You're going to the game.
Yeah, well, it's in my backyard, and it turned out to be a pretty big game. That game should be broadcast in black and white, right? The last time Army and Notre Dame played, and they were both ranked, it was like 1952 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, Army
was
revealed
Mantle's
its
rookie
uniforms. Army revealed its uniforms for the Army Navy game yesterday.
Fire.
They are badass. 101st Airborne tribute. It's if you haven't seen the video, you'll see it because it'll get tweeted into your timeline.
Speaking of Army, guys, just so you know, I watched this thing on Sunday called Band of Brothers on HBO. I'm sure you watched this.
Like
it's
the
just
series, the TV
it's
series?
a series. It's a TV
the
series
one that came out like 15 years ago.
You're talking about this as if like, have you ever heard of this thing? Hey guys, have you ever heard of this?
What's this little mob show called The Sopranos?
That's why I literally said I'm sure you guys have seen it already, but I just got around to seeing it for the first time, and I gotta tell you,
it's pretty.
I wouldn't have lasted 4 minutes in basic training. Like these guys are so badass. Like there are no men like that anymore. Like including me. Like they're like
no, there are, but especially not you.
Yeah.
Maybe there are men like that. Definitely not me.
I have a theory that human beings can adapt to their situation, and when forced into uncomfortable situations, will the sort of instincts move up. But I don't want to get that. That's a story for another time.
I think people in this generation that would sign up to go to World War II.
I mean, there's a lot of them that are doing it now, that are signing up for the military with the fact that they could get sent there. So yes, I do think the fact that we have a military, I think, proves that yes, that exists. Sorry,
I'm just saying, you're right. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
we're soft doesn't mean everybody.
I was just watching this.
I totally get you.
I was just watching this show, Ralph, and my wife does this thing where when she comes from home from out of town, she puts the suitcase in the middle of the floor without unpacking it. And then we go to bed. And then I wake up in the middle of the night to go pee because I have an overactive bladder. And I stub my toe on this suitcase every time.
Did you cry?
And I was like, this happened last night. And I just was so upset. And I'm like, thought about the show, and I'm like, these guys were on U-boats on Normandy Beach, listening to the bullets hitting the front of the ship, knowing that door is going to drop, and I can't even manage to not lose myself in stubbing my toe on a plastic suitcase.
Andy, did you think this episode was going to devolve into Ari discovers D-Day?
Ralph, I have a tweet from Ari queued up. And I was going to wait till we said goodbye to you because I do know you have to work, but I don't care about your schedule or anything else. I kind of want you to be here for this because this ties into this conversation. Obviously, Ari's not cut out for D-Day. I don't think Ari was cut out for the Battle of the Bulge or any of those either.
I'm not cut out.
God forbid the trench warfare in World War I. Yeah. Not a chance. Producer River, do you have the tweets? This is Ari from Monday morning. I hit an all-time low last night. My wife is out of town and my daughter was sleeping over at my mother-in-law's, so I got to lay in bed and watch the NFL games all day and night. I Uber Eats a Slurpee to my house. Judge me. Then 5 hours later, I got another one. I spent $18 having 7-Eleven Blue Raspberry Slurpees sent to my house. The European mind cannot fathom that. That's royalty stuff. Ari.
And it was raining. So I put that poor guy through a blender. And I think it was the same dude. So I would love to know. So here's the backstory.
I know where the 7-Eleven is near your house, by the way. I jogged to the Quick Trip near your house.
Andy jogged to it. Okay, we get it, dude.
The 7-Eleven's across the street. So I know where this guy came from.
So every single day or every Sunday in the fall of my life, in my entire 20s, covering college football on Saturday, if it was a home game, I would go home late at night after working. You guys know how Saturdays are. And my unwind time would be to open the windows, light a candle, put the NFL games on, have the breeze from the fall coming in and just lay there, get a Domino's delivered, whatever. You know how it
I
goes.
want someone who made it through Normandy to hear this.
They
This is
did,
what
they
you
did it
fought
for me.
for.
They fought for that. Yeah. But so anyway, then I met my beautiful wife when I was 30 or 29. And it all changed because this isn't a person who sits at home ever. We have been together for 5 years.
Or Uber Eats a Slurpee.
We've been together for 5 years and we've never laid in bed from morning till night. Like we've never sat at home all day together. There's always an activity or a brunch, or there's her social calendar. I mean, I don't even know how the woman does it. So for the first time in 5 years, I got to be home alone on a Sunday after a long day of work on a beautiful fall day. And it was my only time in 5 years where I could lay there and do nothing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do whatever I want today. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to lay wherever I want. I'm going to spend how much money I want to spend. This is like my day. So I ordered Domino's around noon, like I was accustomed to, got the brick. You know what the brick is. If you know, you know. And then I watched the games after we were done doing our videos. And then, you know, I've been on this weight loss journey. So I haven't been eating very many great, satisfying meals. And I have certainly not been
So you're
drinking
like,
anything.
I know 2 Slurpees.
And I certainly, the one thing and the reason why I got so fat to begin with was a complete and utter addiction to regular soda, because I think it's the most delicious thing in the world. So I haven't had sugar drinks in almost a year. Like I just don't drink regular soda anymore. So I was like, you know what? I'm a king. I'm in my castle. I got the games on. We got bets all over the place. We got fantasy going. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to treat myself today. Like I earned it today. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And then later on, when the Bengals game started, I was like, I wish I had another Slurpee. So I ran it back. You know what? And it's like, I know I could have gone to the store and I know I could have put my pants on and gone downstairs, gotten in the car and driven 5 minutes and gotten one. I know that. But it was part of the spirit of the day where everything was going to be done on my terms. And that's kind of how I got. It's like, it's going to be on my terms today. Is that okay?
While we're using military
yeah.
comparisons here, like that's the Rubicon for me. Getting someone to bring a Slurpee, one Slurpee, or a pint of ice cream, or something like that to my house. Like, I get that that's their job. They've chosen that gig.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm wasting their time.
I tipped them. I mean, I was nice to them. Like, I wasn't just like, bring me a Slurpee, peasant.
The cost alone would kill me. Like the idea of paying $9 for a Slurpee is
I had like $500 on like 9 NFL games at the time. I wasn't worried about the 18 bucks.
I don't care if you have Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos money. I'm not spending $9 for a Slurpee. Like that's bananas.
You're not paying $9 for a Slurpee. You're paying $9 for a Slurpee and the convenience of not having to go get it.
No, you're paying $2 for a Slurpee and $7 for someone to bring you a Slurpee.
Yeah.
And God bless America that's a thing you can do.
It's amazing.
Here's the thing, though,
I'm
Ari.
not doing it.
I can tell that you're like still a relatively new father and a relatively new husband because you're right. All we want is to be left alone. Right, like when
just one day
on Father's Day and my birthday, my wife, because I have been a father and a husband for a while. Like Andy and I have both been fathers and husbands for a while. And generally speaking, when my daughter comes to me and says, "What do you want for Father's Day?" I say, kind of to be left alone. Like if you guys actually, and this actually happened this past Father's Day. My wife and it was either Father's Day or my birthday. My wife and daughter went to a play. They had tickets to a play. Oh no, Dad, we didn't realize it was Father's Day and we didn't get you a ticket. Is that okay? And
you've given me the best gift of all.
And how much I had just be like, sort of like, oh, it's fine. Really,
you have to thread the needle because you can't tell your wife and kids
I'm so happy for you that I will get to sit at home and watch, baseball or it might have been like,
No. You can't tell your wife
NFL
that.
Draft. I
can't tell my wife that all I want for Father's Day is for her to be away from me. Like I would never.
You
say
can't
that.
tell her that.
Like that.
23 years. I can tell her that. She will understand.
Yeah, eventually you'll get there, but right now, no. What will make me happy is you being happy. So here, just go treat yourself to a nice day with Livy. Livy is your daughter.
Yeah,
right?
Livy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, go treat yourself to a nice day, honey. It will be okay. I have some things around the house I want to get to, right? I have some chores that I need to catch up on. Some to-do projects, some honeydews around the house.
My wife is great though,
Absolutely
because
not
during the off season, I get me time. I go play poker a lot when we're in the off season and Saturday and Sunday. Like I drive up to Oklahoma, which is about an hour north, and I will sit in a poker room for 8 hours, and like that's my happy place. So I get that, but in the season, like the ability to just lay there for 10 hours it was like a solar eclipse. It's like you rarely see it, but when you do, you got to take advantage of it. And that's I was just in the mode. I was in the zone.
I'm with you on what you did in spirit. I just think, again, like the $18 worth of Slurpees and picturing you lying on your bed.
No shirt.
No shirt, chest down.
Tarp off. Yeah.
Yeah. Dear diary.
Was there a candle lit?
I had the best day today. I had 2 Slurpees because that's
I did light a candle. I'm a candle guy, by the way. I think it
Candles are
sets the ambiance. There's nothing nicer than a candle blowing when the leaves are changing and you've got the and I open the door to the deck on our house. It also too, like, isn't that a very manly Sunday? Like, honestly, to gamble on the NFL, order pizza, get a Slurpee, lay there.
No,
like that was the day.
Yeah.
So thank you for
I applaud your day. I applaud the spirit of the day. Again, the Slurpees.
I'm just not going that far.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just a bridge too far.
The 101st Airborne didn't say nuts to the German general in the Battle of the Bulge, so I could pay someone $7 to bring me a Slurpee. Actually, they did, and I'm glad they did, but I'm not doing it.
America.
Shane in the chat says Ari already has a pre-order ticket for the new Wicked movie. First of all, Shane, like, I've seen Wicked on Broadway. It's fabulous.
It's awesome. Yes.
It's amazing. Yeah. Second of all, that's actually my Sunday not going to see Wicked because Ari and I have to do some videos. My wife and daughter are going to see Wicked. I'm going to do my videos with Ari, and then me and my son are going to watch 7 hours of commercial-free football. That is a Sunday. Gentlemen, Ralph, I know you got to work. This has been amazing.
Hey, good to
you
see
can
you
see
guys.
me and Ari on the hard count on the On3 Sports YouTube channel at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're filling in for new dad JD Piquel, who in about 5 years will be laying on the couch, Uber Eatsing Slurpees to his house. Tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Let us be your first and second screens as you learn the new CFP rankings. We'll be there for you, breaking it all down. Ralph will be texting us 3 days from now, arguing with us about it. Gentlemen, this has been amazing. I love you both so much. Ralph, we'll see you. Ari, I'll see you in about an hour.